if you're training for Hyrox, you probably have one or more big workouts in your weekly training plan. And as part of these workouts, in order to perform at the level that we're looking for these workouts, it is absolutely critical that you're fueling your body in the right way, as this will impact your ability to execute the workout as prescribed. So first of all, I want to talk about quickly as an overview what I mean when I say a big workout. So there's a couple different buckets I would put this into. Number one is your Hyrox circuits. These are probably the most demanding and intense on your body. Something where you're going back and forth between some sort of steady state cardio and some sort of strength-based movements. It doesn't have to be Hyrox stations, but you get the idea. Similar sort of format to what you'll see during a Hyrox race. The next bucket would be any cardio sessions that are greater than 45 minutes, and especially important when you get to an hour plus, or your weekly long run, 90-minute plus, or even up to 2 hours maybe. Fueling becomes absolutely critical there. And the final bucket here is really intense strength training sessions. So what I'm talking about here is mostly lower body sessions that place a very high demand on your body, but it can also apply to other, full body sort of style strength training sessions. So when it comes to fueling for these different workouts, there's a couple of different categories that we need to be considering for each workout. So number one is, what fuel are you taking in? Number two is, when are you taking this fuel in? And finally, one of the more nuanced points, but still important, is, do you need to fuel further during the workout? So let's first dive into what to take in. The number one thing you want to do here when identifying what to take in is ask yourself, what is going to be the main energy source for your workout? And there's sort of two buckets that this can go into. It's a little more complex than this, but at a high level, you're looking at either mostly carbs or mostly fat. So if you're doing any kind of zone 2 session, your primary fuel source ideally is going to be fat, assuming that your body is reasonably well adapted and able to use fat effectively as a fuel source, but you will still be using carbs as a fuel source. It'll just be likely a little more bias to burning fat. For most other sessions, so your Hyrox workouts, your big strength workouts, your primary fuel source is going to be carbs. Now, two different considerations here that come with the availability of these two fuel sources of carbs versus fat. So for the purposes of, a singular workout, the body has essentially an unlimited supply of fat. There's almost no way that you can burn through all the fat on your body in one workout. Versus with carbs, this varies from person to person, but the body can store somewhere around 2,000 calories worth of carbs. And while that's a lot of calories for one workout, your body is going to stop you well before you run out of carbs. This is, you can think of when people are so-called hitting the wall during a marathon, this is typically what's happened is your body's getting to a point where it's desperately trying to preserve what little carbs it has left. So given these constraints on how much of a supply the body has of each of these different fuel sources, this should lead us to the conclusion that fueling before non-zone 2 workouts is an absolute must. And now that is not to say you shouldn't fuel before zone 2 workouts, but because our strength workouts and our high rock circuits are mainly fueled by carbs, we want to make sure that we have enough carbs available. So at some point before the workout, you want to have a meal that is providing you with enough carbs to fuel your workout. And there's a lot of different considerations that go into this. You can estimate, roughly how many carbs your body is going to be burning through in a given workout, as well as when the last time you ate was. So, especially if you're working out in the morning, if you have a long overnight fast, can be a good idea to get some carbs in the morning before your workout. Now, these meals, pre-workout meals, don't have to be restricted to just carbs. You can absolutely get protein and fat in there as well, but you do want to consider how your body will be digesting the meal as you start adding in proteins and fats. You don't want to be feeling sluggish during the workout. And part of this is just you're going to have to experiment a little bit yourself and see how your body feels and handles different meals, and as we'll get into later, when you're taking in these meals. So there are, of course, lots of different carb sources as well, and these are going to be digesting at different rates. So you can think of slower digesting carbs like potatoes, rice, oats. Those are fairly complex, take longer to digest. And, somewhere in the middle is probably more like your bread, pasta, that sort of thing. And then on the more fast digesting end, you're looking at like fruit, and then even faster, probably gels, sports drinks become available much faster. And again, we'll get into this in the next section in terms of when you should be taking these in. And last factor of what to take in is you want to be considering, number one, when you last ate, how soon until you work out, the workout demand, and your body size. Obviously, someone who's 250 pounds versus someone who's 130 pounds will not have the same carb requirement to do the same workout. And so those four factors should all influence the total number of carbs that you're taking in. Let's move on to when you should be taking in these carbs. So, as I mentioned earlier, a couple different categories of carbs in terms of how complex they are and how long they take to digest. So, obviously, the longer your carb source takes to digest, the further ahead of the workout you want to do it, to take it in. So, for things like oats, potatoes, rice, ideally you're looking at least 2 to 3 hours before, both in order to actually have the carbs available to your body during the workout and to not feel sluggish from still being in the digestion process during the workout. And that 2 to 3 hours is, that's not saying you have to hit that exactly. You can, of course, go closer to the workout, and you can also go further away from the workout, and your body will still have the carbs available. And, you can even consider how you're fueling the night before. If you know that first thing in the morning when you're waking up, you're going out to hit a cardio session, you probably want to be taking in some complex carbs the night before, making sure those are digesting overnight and available to your body to use in the morning. Another option, of course, is to go with simpler carbs, which are faster to digest, become available much quicker, which means that you can take them closer to the workout. You can even take them, right before the workout. 30 minutes is probably a better spot. And again, this is for things like fruits, gels, sports drinks. And finally, one more consideration on the topic of when you're taking in your carbs. Uh, if you're cutting, you're probably using a limited number of carbs in your diet for the day. So you want to be considering uh, putting your meals with carbs around your workouts, generally right before. And this is going to help a lot with your energy levels going into these workouts. For anyone who's been on a intense cut before, you're probably familiar with that feeling of, being tired and a little bit sluggish. And a big part of that can be from the lack of carbs, among other factors, but the carbs certainly play a factor there. So again, just great time for carbs when you're on a cut is to put them in right before your workouts. Uh, Last bucket here, fueling during workouts. So to me, this is less important than the other two, but certainly still worth consideration. So uh, generally, we absolutely need to be fueling before workouts. We don't necessarily need to be fueling during workouts, but I do want to give you a couple questions you can ask yourself to decide if you should be fueling during the workout. So number one, how long and intense is the workout? And number two, how much did you eat before? So as far as zone two workouts go, if you're doing something that's under 90 minutes, it's probably not needed. As we covered earlier, most of your fuel is coming from fat, so you shouldn't be, completely exhausting your body's carb sources. But the longer you go, as you start to get over an hour and a half, or especially over 2 hours, um, you're going to start to see much more of a benefit from adding some carbs in as your body starts getting deeper into its supply of carbs that it's using. In terms of fueling during circuit training, if you're doing a circuit that's under an hour, there's probably not a lot of benefit. By the time your body is actually able to start digesting some of the carbs and making them available as a fuel source, you're probably pretty much done the workout if you take it, even if you take it, 20 minutes in and it takes about half an hour to start enabling your body to actually use the carbs that you're taking in, you're pretty much done the workout if it's under an hour. If it's over an hour, it can be worth it. But again, it's much more important to fuel ahead of time than to try and make up for it during the workout. Finally, if we want to look quickly at strength training here, you probably don't need to be fueling during your strength training workouts, as you're definitely not fully depleting your glycogen or absolutely emptying the tank of carbs. But there's absolutely some benefit to managing your overall energy levels. So for many people, especially including myself, if I haven't eaten for many hours, my overall energy level is just kind of a little bit lower, and that's typically going to impact my workout quality and performance. So personally, just getting a few carbs in before a workout, feeling, not having that feeling of a growling empty stomach, can absolutely help with my energy levels during the workout, without having me feel sluggish and like I'm digesting a big meal. So that can just be something simple before, like, a little bit of fruit or something like that, a small snack, something with, just a little bit of carbs to get me going and get me through the workout. So that covers our breakdown today of how you should be fueling for HYROX workouts. If you're looking for help with the programming side of your HYROX training and getting your workouts set up, you can check out my app, Hybrid Strength Fitness. It is linked in the description, and it'll help you get set up with a program for your High Rocks training that will help guide you to your best performance yet.